It's now October, which means all of you Apple fans should be getting hyped up for another Apple event, because out of the last 15 years, there have been 10 October events, which is 66% of the time, so the chances are quite high. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you guys exactly which brand new Apple products to expect later this month, as well as going through all of the leaks and details we currently have right now. Let's first start with the Mac. Back in July, Mark Gurman came out and said that the first M3 Apple Silicon Macs are likely getting launched in October, including the new M3 iMac, the 13-inch MacBook Air, and 13-inch MacBook Pro. Yes, that model that nobody wants anymore with the huge bezels and old design. Well, apparently, Apple's updating it again. And then just last week, a verified source informed Mac rumors that imminent changes are coming to Mac trade-in values, suggesting that Apple will likely begin accepting new models for trade-in this month, which usually correlates with the launch of new Mac products, specifically around the middle of October. Now, if you think about it, it makes total sense for the M3 chip to launch this fall because Apple released the M2 chip exactly 1.5 years after the M1 chip, which launched in the fall of 2020. So if the M3 followed that cycle, 3 years after the M1 would literally be this fall, perfect for an October event. And on top of that, we know that Apple gave the same M1 and M2 chips to the iPad Pros around 6 months after they gave it to the Macs, and we're expecting new iPad Pros to come in the spring to summer of 2024, which would match the timelines perfectly. But there is just a little problem. Ming-Chi Kuo came out last month and said that the first MacBooks with an M3 chip are unlikely to launch this year at all. So maybe that means we should just expect an M3 iMac to launch, or maybe it means that the M3 launch will get delayed even further until the spring. Well, I actually don't think so, because it would mean there would be an almost 2-year gap between the M2 and M3 chips, which just doesn't make sense. And then that would essentially further delay both the M3 iPad Pro and the high-end M3 Pro and M3 Max MacBook Pros, which Mark Gurman has already leaked and said he expects them to come sometime in 2024, likely the summer or the fall. But for this year, based on all the data we have, I'm fairly certain we should be seeing the launch of the M3 chip either later this month or next month in November. It just makes so much sense in terms of the timelines and cycles, especially since Apple needs to have enough time to release the M3 iMac as well as the new 13-inch MacBooks. And now, with that said, let's get into the other 2 or 3 things we should be expecting at this event, and that's basically a bunch of iPads. But before we get into that, I want to talk about something that's made my life a whole lot easier over the past 6 months. The MACH V1 Ultra, an all-in-one cordless wet and dry vacuum that's been helping us keep our kitchen and dining room spotless. Unlike a Dyson that'll only vacuum your floors, the V1 Ultra vacuums and mops at the same time, taking less than half the time to get your floors cleaned because the mop brush actually cleans itself as it spins, so you don't have to constantly soak and wring out the water like with manual mops. It's been a huge help since we have kids that constantly drop or spill their food, and it even has a steam cleaning mode that removes built-up grime and disinfects with onboard ozone-generated water and auto-mixed cleaning liquid with a final self-cleaning mode that fully dries the mop brush. My wife's absolute favorite use case with the V1 Ultra has been cleaning wet cereal or sticky rice, which is by far the toughest thing to sweep or mop, and the V1 Ultra does it instantly, as well as cleaning up sticky messes like syrup, ketchup, milk, wet macaroni, you name it. It works so well that we recommended it to my sister-in-law with 7 kids, including 2 twins, and they use it every single day. So if you're interested in ordering the V1 Ultra for yourself or as a Christmas gift, it's now on sale for the lowest price all year, matching Black Friday on their Prime Day promotion for $70 off on October 11th by using the link in the description below. Now back to the iPads. While I'm not expecting any major changes since that will come with the iPad Pro next year, I am expecting some iterative updates to the models. Ming-Chi Kuo did come out last month and say that the new iPads are unlikely to launch this year, but I'm honestly not buying it. How could Apple decide to not release any M3 Max and not release any iPads? It just doesn't make sense. In the history of the iPad, there hasn't been a single year where we didn't get a new iPad launch. So I'm 100% sure we will be getting at least one iPad. And on top of that, Apple has released a new budget iPad every single year for the past 6 years without skipping a beat. Even when the changes were so small, like in 2020, when they simply swapped out the chip for a powerful A12 and basically did nothing else. They still updated it. So this year, I'm expecting a small update to the budget iPad with a tiny change of upgrading the chip from an A14 to an A16 chip, and people are gonna love it. But if you wanted more evidence than that, we just had a huge leak last week. Within the second beta of iOS 17.1, the software developer Steve Moser discovered a reference to USB-C charging for the Apple Pencil. This basically shows that Apple is about to update the original Apple Pencil with a new USB-C connector at the back, replacing the current Lightning connector, which has no place at all and doesn't make sense because the iPad 10 now has a USB-C port, so you can't even plug in the Apple Pencil for charging like you used to do before. It's a design that doesn't make any sense at all unless Apple is going to release a new Apple Pencil with USB-C and maybe some new features alongside it. Now moving on to the other iPads, we have even more new leaks that are coming out, which usually only happens when a launch of new products is imminent. We just got a new report claiming that Apple is working on 2 new iPad Air models, codenamed J507 and J508, which perfectly matches up to the iPad Air codename that Mark Gurman reported in June. Apple is also apparently working on 2 more iPad Air models, J537 and J538, but it isn't clear how those ones will be different. I'm personally just expecting Apple to give the iPad Air 6 an update to the M2 chip, which in my opinion has to happen very soon, probably this month, because the M2 iPad Air absolutely must launch before Apple reveals the M3 chip, or else it's not gonna look good to release an iPad Air with the old M2. On top of that, Apple's recently been updating the iPad Air every 1.5 years, with the current iPad Air 5 being released basically a year and a half ago, so the timelines match up, and on top of that, the Air never gets updated alongside the iPad Pro because these products kind of compete with each other. And since we're expecting the iPad Pros early next year, the Air absolutely must get updated this fall. Now, Mark Gurman last month said that the October event is unlikely, but even despite that, he's still expecting at least a press release of the iPad Air refresh to happen this month, so I'm almost 100% sure that the Air 6 is coming in October. And finally, we have the iPad Mini 6, and I honestly think it's also coming this month as well for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we've been seeing more and more leaks about a refresh model, like for example, from TechRev on Twitter, or X, who says the upcoming iPad Mini 7 will still come with a 60Hz display. And second, in 2019, Apple released both an iPad Air and iPad Mini at the same time, so they could easily repeat that and do it again this year. And then finally, it has now been over 2 years since the release of the previous iPad Mini 6, so if any iPad should be getting an update, it's the Mini. And I believe it's happening this month with a simple chip swap to the new A17 Pro chip, just like in the iPhone 15 Pro models. This will make it really enticing to upgrade since it's going to be the perfect device for AAA gaming with the new Metal FX support, ray tracing, and more. So with all that said, that's everything you should expect this month, even if we actually don't get an October event and we get press releases instead. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Don't forget about that crazy good deal for the MACH V1 Ultra below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.